Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Are
Please
we good?
accept my humble obeisances. Yes, I think we are live and it's 5:30. Prabhu, thank you so much for coming and giving association to our Naperville Center. To all the devotees, a little introduction about Prabhu. Chaitratmadas Prabhuji journey into Krishna consciousness started in St. Louis, Missouri in 1973, the year I born. Thank you, Prabhu.
I guess that makes me an old man.
Thank you, Prabhu. He very soon, in the year 1974, began serving Sri Sri Nitai Gaur Nataraj in St. Louis Temple as a chief temple priest in St. Louis. Later on, Prabhu continued serving the deities in many ISKCON temples, including Dallas, Houston, Chicago, and in one of the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party buses. All the New York temples. Wow. Thank you, Prabhu. Lot of service to deities. Currently, he is serving on the DT management board for Radha Shyamsundar in Alachua, Florida. He's also an advisor for the DT worship conferences. While Chitratma Das Prabhu, basic training came from his early years of service in St. Louis. He has furthered his understanding and knowledge of DT service, yagnas, and samskaras from variety of sources in ISKCON DT worship departments all over the world. Besides this, Prabhu, he is an expert storyteller and is appreciated and received by children, youth, and adults alike for his aspiring service sessions on Vaishnava Acharyas. He resides in Alachua, Florida with his wife, Mataji Pashupati, and two children, Amananda and Manjula. Thank you, Prabhu.
Actually, that bio is a little old. My daughter Manjula lives in Australia and my son lives in Denver now. They're both married and have children of their own. I guess I should update that.
Now it makes us really old.
Now I have a little work to do. Thank you very much for inviting me. One of my favorite things to do in Krishna consciousness is speak about our Vaishnava Acharyas. And to this end, I have a website with all types of lectures on them, chadaratmadas.com, where the lives of our Vaishnava Acharyas are brought into a understanding that we can apply to our own devotional service. I was asked to pick a topic for today, and I very quickly was able to come to the topic of Gangamata Goswamini. Tomorrow is the disappearance day of Gangamata Goswamini. And unfortunately, many ISKCON devotees are not at all familiar with who she is. So the natural first question someone would ask, well, is she a part of our line? So we find that the immediate energy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gadadhar Pandit, he had one disciple, and that disciple's name was Ananta Acharya. Now, Krishnadas Kaviraj explains in the Chaitanya Charitamrita the qualities of this Ananta Acharya. He says that he was always absorbed in love of God, he was magnanimous, and he was advanced in all aspects of devotional service. He was a reservoir of all good qualities. And Ananta Acharya had one very well-known disciple named Haridas Pandit. Haridas Pandit was the chief pujari during the time of the Goswamis at the Govindaji temple. And his qualities are given by Krishnadas Kaviraj as well, that he's very famous, very gentle, tolerant, peaceful, magnanimous, grave, and sweet in all of his words, and very sober, as well as respectful to all devotees. They say that there was never any jealousy in his heart. So Krishnadas Kaviraj has mentioned these two in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we see they're directly connected to our line of the Goswamis. Now, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in his Anubhasya goes one step further, and he describes Anantacharya as an incarnation of Sudevi, one of the 8 prominent gopis. This is also confirmed in the Gaur Gonadesha Deepika. So we see that this is not a stretch to find the connection to Haridas Pandit's dearest disciple. He had two disciples that were very well known, Lakshmi, who we'll hear about, and Gangamata. And so these were devotees that were the followers of Haridas Pandit, who was the disciple of Anantacharya, who was the disciple of Gadadhar Pandit. So we see a very clear line there. So a little bit of background. One thing that I am going to try and do is pack this into 1 hour. When I spoke in Vrindavan during Kartik this year on Gangamata Goswamini, we went for 2 days, 2 1-hour sessions. Of course, everything is being translated into Russian because the Russian devotees I'm associated with, so that cuts it down in about half. So we'll see how successful we are. But before we start off on her life, Vanchakapaturibhascha kripa sindhubehevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Om jnana tamarandasya jananjana shalakaya chaksu unmritam yanatasmai sri gurave namaha. Mukam karoti vachalam pangumlam jayate girim yakripatamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinatarino. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There are two qualities that we will find as we go through this discourse that were prominent qualities of Gangamata Goswamini: determination and detachment. In the beginning of her life, we see this detachment. She was the daughter of a great king. His name was Naresh Narayana, and there was a section of Bengal that he was the king of. Very powerful king, and his daughter's name was Sachi. And Sachi, from her birth, was a topmost devotee of the Lord, very dedicated to the worship of Sri Krishna, and always engaging herself in different types of devotional service. So far as her schooling, grammar, poetry, she became expert at all these things very, very quickly. Because she was the daughter of a king, she had a bit more of an opportunity than most young girls would have for an education. She studied all the scriptures to no end. Many days would find her, instead of being out playing with the other girls and all, sitting and studying the different scriptures. So even from the age of 5 years old, she started with her worship of Sri Krishna. And she would sing for Krishna. She would play different games in front of the deity. In her mind, everything she was doing was for Krishna. So by the time she reached about 15, 16 or so, of course, she was completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. We see this with many of our own children. We begin to give them their Krishna consciousness at a young age. And by the time they become teenagers, we see so many of them are just so appreciative of being engaged in devotional service. So the thing is, she was about that age she was that age for being married. She was very beautiful. She was very intelligent. She was very learned. And she was very devoted. And she was the daughter of a king. So all of the young boys wanted to marry her. Everyone was lining up for hopeful getting the opportunity. And the mother and father, they were very interested to get her married, but she had no attraction for any of these boys. Nothing at all. She simply would spend her time studying Sanskrit and reading the different shastras. So mother and father, they began to think, they began to consider, we really have to arrange for her marriage. She's at that age, we can't let this go. So she gave them a statement that showed her detachment from everything in this world, though she was the daughter of a king. She said to mother and father, I will not marry any man of this mortal world. You find a man who is not of this mortal world, and I will marry him. But she knew there's only one man not of this mortal world, and that's Krishna. So she explained to her parents like this, and she was very determined and kept this up. No interest, no association, not even concerned about any of these boys. So father kept pushing. Finally, she said to her father one day, my marriage is already arranged. You don't need to worry. One day I will go to Vrindavan and I will meet my beloved in Vrindavan. Of course, as devotees, we all know what this means. The father, he could understand she was just not going to have any of this. So the mother and father, they became very distressed and they departed from this world. They could not get their only daughter married. She had no interest, so they left. And they put the entire kingdom in her charge. So she was a princess, very intelligent, very well versed, very knowledgeable. So she immediately took up the difficult mantle of running the kingdom. And she immediately appointed different relatives and different ministers to run this thing, and you take care of that. And then once everything was in place, she left and went on pilgrimage. Now you're all managing so nicely, I'm going to go on pilgrimage. So she went first to Jagannath Puri. And when she arrived at Jagannath Puri, she was having darshan before Lord Jagannath, and she received a message in her heart from Lord Jagannath directly. Lord Jagannath said to her, he said, you should immediately go to Vrindavan without any delay. So with this, excuse me, with this understanding in her heart of what the Lord was directing her to do, she immediately departed for Vrindavan. You can imagine the determination required, a young princess, she's not surrounded by an entourage or anything, to just pack up and go to Vrindavan from Jagannath Puri. It's not an easy task, but she was extremely determined. So this is, I don't know, several hundred miles, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 miles, something like that. It's a long distance. None of us would even take this. If I remember when I was on Padayatra, just the travels we did through the different parts of, sometimes it was so difficult. And we were just going a few hours a day and then camping at night. Some nice facility was there. So she was traveling in this way. So when she arrived in Vrindavan, immediately upon coming in contact with that most holy Dham, she became mad with the love of God. She became completely absorbed for Krishna, searching for him everywhere. All the different places she would try to find. She had heard about this place and that place and going to all the different places where Krishna's pastimes were looking for him. Just as the gopis had done, she was asking the different trees, asking the Bamsi Bhat trees there, have you seen Krishna? Where is he gone? Can you tell me where he is? Now, at this time, as I mentioned in Vrindavan, Haridas Pandit was residing there. His devotion to Sri Gaurnitai was unsurpassed. Such an amazing devotee. He was always engaged in hearing and chanting, always engaged in glorifying Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And so he would regularly give classes. This is the duty of a sadhu, to speak. So he would regularly give classes, and all the Brijbasis and all the different saints and sadhus, they would all come and attend because everyone liked his katha so much. So Sachi Devi, she would also come and hear his classes. She would sit quietly in the back and listen. She saw his divine form and his spiritual austerity. She became very attracted to him. So after meditating on a few days, because of course he's the speaker, he's seeing in the back, there's this young girl sitting there all the time, very attentively listening. So in this way, he saw that she was there and he made note of it. So Sachi came one day and she offered her obeisances at the lotus feet of Haridas Pandit. And she begged him, she said, I've come here to please take your shelter. I request that you please give me initiation, or if you do not give me shelter, then I will simply die. I want to see Krishna. I want to see Radha, but I cannot see them without your guidance. Please take care of, please give me that shelter. So very nice mood coming before the spiritual master. This is actually the proper mood for the disciple in coming before the spiritual master like this. So Haridas Pandit, he's a very intelligent devotee. He can look and perceive, and he could see that this is a very wealthy daughter. She's actually the daughter of a king. So he said to her, he said, it is not possible for the daughter of a king to come to Vrindavan and live as a poor devotee, to constantly be absorbed in bhajan, to have very little to eat, to have no bodily comforts. It will be better for you if you return home and you just worship Krishna from within your heart. Sachi Devi was intelligent, as we mentioned. So she understood what was happening. Haridas Pandit was giving her a test. Her determination bears out. So very renounced and very austere, she was determined to stay in Vrindavan. She went on and continued to do her bhajan, and she would absorb herself in great austerities, living simply on the banks of the Jamuna, no comfortable set place to live. She step by step renounced all of her opulences. First the jewelry went, and the opulent clothing went, and little by little, everything was given away. And she fine-tuned her level of renunciation further and further and further. So one day, Haridas Pandit was noticing this because she's still coming for the classes and listening, and he sees what's going on in Vrindavan. So he gives her some instruction. This is what every disciple aspires. Please give me some instructions, my dear Gurudev. So he instructs her. He says, if you like, he didn't tell her to do it. If you like, giving up all pride and all fear, you can wander through the Braj forest. You can wander through the Braj forest and practice begging from one place to another, just like a renounced devotee. If you do this, you will have my blessings. So when she got this instruction, she felt that she had been accepted by Haridas Pandit because he was giving her some instruction now. And with great joy, she began to execute. She would completely free herself from any fear, completely give up any false ego. She would clothe herself with only whatever rags she would find on the bank of the Jamuna, whatever discarded cloth was there. We've heard this example in many of our different acharyas. They adjust in this way. The 6 Goswamis, of course, Prabhupada uses the word kanta. Just some rags put together like this. This was their clothing. So she would do like this. And then, of course, she practiced madhukari, going from one place to another, one house to another, begging whatever little food would be given to her. And it mentions that this is the practice of madhukari because it's the practice of the bumblebee, going from one flower to another, little pollen here, little pollen there. So she was doing like this, going from one home to another. Whatever they would give, whatever they didn't give, that was fine. Just putting out the cloth and taking whatever was given. So she showed very, very great renunciation by practicing this. And all the devotees in Vrindavan, Vrindavan is a small village at this time. Everybody knows everything. It's just like here in Alachua. Nobody in the temple community can do anything without everybody knowing about it. And so in the same way, everyone knew she was becoming so advanced. But one thing that we often don't think about when we hear about this level of renunciation of the devotees, how the Goswamis cared little for eating and sleeping. Every third day, Raghunath would have a handful of buttermilk, things like this. That along with this type of neglect comes difficulty in the body. If one doesn't eat, if one doesn't take some care of the body, difficulty and ill health and frailty comes in. So soon she became very frail, very weak, was not able to do very much because of this difficulty with this level of austerity. She became very thin, and her natural effulgence became a bit covered by the dint of her austerity and renunciation. But nonetheless, just as the Goswami, she took no notice of anything, no notice of her condition, and continued with her austerities. She was actually physically exhausted from performing such strict austerities. As I mentioned, she's living just on the bank of the Jamuna. She would go regularly to Govindaji temple and clean the floor. This is so-called menial service. I remember when I was a young brahmachari, first service was to clean the toilet. Very happily cleaning the toilet. Next service, you get to clean the hallways. Next service, you get to mop the ashram. Top service, you now get to go in front of the deities and sweep and mop the floor. I remember the day I was awarded that service to go and sweep and mop the temple room. I felt I'd just been given the greatest benediction in all of life. So this is how we think as a devotee. But for the materialist, what, sweeping and mopping? I don't want to do this. That's for someone lower than me. The devotee's always eager to do this. So at any rate, She would go to the temple and regularly do her circumambulation and attend the different artis and listen to the kata of her spiritual master like this going on. So Hari Das Pandit took note of this, and he became filled with great appreciation for her devotion. So he called her one day. He said, Sachi, said, you were a princess, yet in spite of being a princess, you have made great and intense efforts to worship Krishna. Because of your austerity and because of your renunciation, I become supremely happy with you, and I will award you with the mantra. So at that time, he gave her Diksha, initiated her into the sacred mantra. And this took place in the Govindaji temple on Ekadasi day. What an auspicious time to get initiation. So she received this. Now, after Haridas gave her initiation, he continued to instruct her how she should chant, what she should do for how to remember the Lord, how to practice devotional service, coming in the line of Rupa Goswami, how to accept Krishna as her beloved, and how to be the servant of Srimati Radhika. So these were the high level of instructions. We didn't see Prabhupada gave any of this to us. 1973, when we were coming off of the streets into the temple, Prabhupada was not telling us about how to do all these things. But Sachi was of a different character. She's already living in Vrindavan, already performing great, great austerities like that. So she at this time started to perform her service very strictly. 64 rounds of japa every day. This was the minimum that were performed at this time. And she would engage herself like that and be completely absorbed. She never accepted a particular bhajan kutir. One of the things we go to Vrindavan and we can go, we see the bhajan kutir, this one or that one, or the place where this one performed their seva. She would go to different places, and only on the banks of the river or sitting under a tree. She had no specific bhajan kutir like that. And her spiritual master, Haridas Pandit, told her, he said, I'm not going to arrange any of this for you. If you want something like that, you can do it yourself. I have nothing to do with these things. You manage your own business. So she found one broken down temple, and she would live there. It was on the banks of the Jamuna. She would perform her sadhana and sleep there, and take her meal, whatever was given to her from Madhukari like that. So she never made an arrangement to get her prasad. Whatever was brought, whatever was given freely, if she didn't get anything, she would simply fast. So we can see such an amazing level of renunciation. I just had a note here that it's not so clear. Do I need to speak up a little? No, it's okay. All right, good. So when Sachi would go, she would sometimes get her Madhukari would be a chapati. So she wouldn't take the whole chapati. She would eat 1/4 of the chapati and then save, for giving to other persons that might need. She was always eating whatever she received, she was eating less than that. So in this way, she was very, very satisfied, going deeper and deeper and deeper into her renunciation. And after some time, Haridas Pandit called her and gave her a very wonderful instruction. He said, I want you now to go to Radhakund. Go to the place of Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, and you do bhajans there at Radhakund just as he did. But I do not want you to be by yourself. It is not safe for you. So I have one disciple whose name is Lakshmi Priya. And she has just arrived here in Vrindavan. So she wants that I want that you and her both go stay at Radhakund together, and you can give each other association and protection at the same time. So just as Mahaprabhu placed Raghunath Das Goswami in the hands of Sarup Damodar, similarly, we see that Haridas Pandit placed Sachi Devi into the hands of Lakshmi Priya. And so in this way, she went As it mentions, she took the message of her guru on her head, very happily like this. And she and Lakshmi Devi stayed at Radhakund. Every day they would do Govardhan Parikram. I don't know how many of you have had the good fortune to go to Vrindavan to do Govardhan Parikram. For the last few years, I've been blessed to go to Vrindavan during Kartik every year with Indradumna Swami and his group of devotees. And regularly, several times during the month, we get to do Parikram of Govardhan Hill. So every day, Lakshmi Priya and Sachi were doing Parikram of Govardhan Hill. And in this way, they were not even concerned. They're eating or they're sleeping. It was of no issue to them. But they were greatly, greatly satisfied being in Radhakund and being able to engage in that service. So for several years, she stayed there. It actually mentions that she stayed in the Radhakund Vrindavan area for 25 years. And then after this, Haridas Pandit was very, very elderly. And he called her back to Vrindavan and he instructed her, you should now go to Nilachala, to the Gambhira, to the room where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has performed his service. You can stay there for some time. There, you will develop perfection in devotional service. Do not delay. Anytime we get an instruction from the spiritual master and it includes do not delay, we know it's important. We've got to do it right away. Now, he gave one other instruction. He said, also, go to the place of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. That place is now in ruins. No one is caring for it. He says, I want you to find that place. It is a simple temple. Establish it, settle your worship there, and daily take the prasadam of Lord Jagannath. So by this point, of course, I didn't mention, but Lakshmi Priya had already departed from this world. She was much older than Sachi. And so by herself, she left Vrindavan, went all the way to Jagannath Puri, and managed to go in the same path that Sanatana Goswami had traveled when he went there. And it just, we can't begin to imagine traveling on foot from Vrindavan to Jagannath Puri by yourself, what to speak of by yourself as a renounced sadhvi. So in this way, she arrived in Puri and she discovered the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And she discovered, yes, certainly it's completely run down. Nobody's taking care of it. So she would engage in her bhajan there every day. And she began sitting in that courtyard. I don't know if any of you have been there. It's a beautiful little courtyard now. She would sit in that courtyard and every day give Srimad Bhagavatam class. And her Srimad Bhagavatam classes were filled with erudite knowledge and deep, deep devotion. And many of the local devotees would come and they would listen. And after some time, she, she had found the Damodar Shila, which was worshipped by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. It had been neglected and left there. So she reestablished the worship of that and reestablished the daily Bhagavatam classes. As it says in the first canto of Bhagavatam, Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya, daily speaking the Bhagavatam. It's our eternal activity. So in this way, she began to take care of the deity, refurbish the place, people coming, have them do this, that, fix it up in this way, hold the classes. Now, at that time, Mukunda Dev, he was the king of Jagannath Puri, and he had heard about this Sadhvi, Sachi, and how she was speaking on the Bhagavatam. So he would go in disguise and begin to listen to her. I mean, you can imagine if you're giving Bhagavatam class and the king of Puri shows up, well, it's going to be a whole big bubub. It's going to be an entourage. You're going to have to stop and receive and all. And he was such a humble devotee in his heart. He didn't want any of that. He simply wanted to hear Bhagavatam from an advanced devotee. So he put disguise, much like Lord Ramchandra did when he was going throughout the village. He put disguise and he went and he sat humbly and he listened to Sachi Dev's Srimad Bhagavatam classes. After some time listening to her and realizing, he decided he wanted to make a nice offering to her. So that night he had a dream, and Lord Jagannath came to him in a dream. We can imagine this is quite practical. He's the king of Puri. He's overseeing the worship of Jagannath, and he has a desire to satisfy a sadhu. So Jagannath comes to him, and he says, you offer to Sachi a place on the bank of the Ganges River. There is some land there that you own. You offer that to Sachi. So the following day, he went to see Sachi as the king, as King Mukunda. He arrived before her, and with great humility, Sachi offered him a place, set him down, and inquired what service she could render. And then he explained to her about his dream, about the vision he had, and about the instruction from Lord Jagannath, and that he was to construct a place for her on the Ganga. So Sachi was not very interested. She had given up all of this wealth. She had given up all of this comfort. She had no interest in having someone build something for her to live comfortably. So she politely refused. But the king kept pressing again and again and again, trying to get his wishes fulfilled. So at that time, not wanting to disobey the instruction he had received from Lord Jagannath, the king issued a decree, and he named a ghat by the side of the white Ganges, as it's called, in the name of Sachi Mata. So this became her place, whether she was going to live there or not. He wanted to fulfill Jagannath's desire of giving her this place. So in this way it came to be, and she became very famous in Puri. Everyone knew that she was an ex-princess who had come to give her life to Mahaprabhu and would speak wonderfully on the glories of Mahaprabhu. So everyone was coming. It was becoming very, very popular. And so the day was approaching on the proper calendar, and it was Mahavaruni Snan. Now, Mahavaruni Snan is when one actually goes to the Ganga to take bath. This is a proper time. One makes a pilgrimage to go to the Ganga. The Ganga, of course, is not very close there in Puri. So some 200 miles away, something like that. So she had this desire, but at the same time, the instruction that Haridas Pandit had given her was never leave Puri. You go there, you establish yourself, you preach, and you stay there for the rest of your life. You don't leave. So she's thinking, I want to take part in this Mahavaruni Snan. I want to honor the Ganga, but my guru has instructed me that I cannot leave Puri. So what shall I do? So an amazing thing. That night, Jagannath appeared in a dream to her. And he said, on the day of Mahavaruni, you will take bath. You must take bath in the sacred Ganga. Ganga Devi has been praying to me for your association. This is the amazing thing about the quality of an advanced devotee. Even the demigods, even the great personalities, they all want the association of such a devotee. So Jagannath instructed her, you must go. This must be what you do. Now, being very joyous at having this vision of Lord Jagannath, Sachi decided, well, I guess I have to do it. So in the middle of the night, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, this white Ganga, as it's called, is a bathing ghat just on the banks of one of the ghats there near the Jagannath temple. It's not actually on the Ganges itself. So in the middle of the night, she snuck away to this place. She went there, it's called Sweta Ganga, and she took her bath there. And the most amazing thing happened. The Ganges River in that farm began to pick her up in its waves. We hear a similar pastime with the Padmavati River when Mahaprabhu entered that river and gave the prema to Mother Padmavati that he would then in turn give to Narottam Das Thakur. So the waves were lifting and lifting like this. So these waves, they picked up Sachi and they began to flow her. And where did they take her? They took her in a flood right into the Jagannath Mandir. and right into the inner sanctum in front of Lord Jagannath. Now, this is the interesting thing. She sees in the temple thousands upon thousands of devotees engaged in kirtan and engaged in the festivities, although there's no one there. She's been given this spiritual vision by Lord Jagannath to see all of this going on. So the four directions are filled with all the different prayers of these devotees and with great shouts of ecstasy. Everyone's bathing in the Ganga and she gets to see all this. But what happens is then she's placed right in front of Jagannath. Now, the doors to the Jagannath Mandir are locked and closed at this time. The guards are outside. But the guards, they hear the sound of some commotion in there. They can't imagine, everything's locked. How is there anything going on? So what's possibly happening? So the guards, they hear this noise. They go and they wake up the temple priest. The temple priests go and get the king, because it's a strict policy. You can't open the doors to Jagannath's inner sanctum once he's taken rest. It's not done. So the guards can't just go, well, something's going on, we'll open it up and look. And the priest can't just break tradition, well, we'll open it up and look. So they have to go to the king. So they explain to the king there's something going on there. So they all go and they open the gates. When they open the gates, they open the doors. And the most amazing thing, there at the lotus feet of Lord Jagannath, they find Sachi Devi. So the pujaris, they conclude that she's a thief. She's hidden herself in the temple. She's gotten herself locked in here so that she can steal the gold ornaments and the valuables of Lord Jagannath. There must be something to be done to her. But the local people, they all know Sachi. Say, no, this can't be true. There must be some mystery. Something must be. So Sachi Devi, she began to immediately think of Krishna. And she said, Krishna is very merciful. The Ganges has come to me. She has made me take my bath in her, and she has brought me to the lotus feet of Lord Jagannath. So she couldn't explain any of this to the temple priest. He's not going to understand. So she just remained silent and kept her realizations to herself. As a result, she was taken as a thief, put into jail, and placed into the dungeons in the bottom of the jail. She did not mind. She simply said, well, she lived in a broken down temple in Vrindavan for some time. This at least had some little bit of security to it. So she sat there and she simply chanted. She didn't make any protest. She simply waited her trial, and the Lord will take care of me. It is up to him. This is the detachment she was famous for. Sitting in this place, sitting in that place, here, there, whatever, I'll depend upon the Lord's mercy. So in this way, she chanted the holy names of the Lord day and night, day and night, day and night. Now, Lord Jagannath came to Mukunda Dev, the king, once again in a dream. You know how we see the pictures of the Lord Jagannath, he's got that big smile, very big smile. He's always very happy. Lord Jagannath was not smiling very big when he came into Mukunda Dev's dream. He was not smiling at all. He was very angry. He said to the king, he said, you. Can you imagine Lord Jagannath saying that? You. He said, you immediately release Sachi Dev from your dungeons. I was the one that brought her to my lotus feet because I personally wanted to have her darshan. I have brought her in. You must immediately set her free. If you want your life to be auspicious at all, then you, all of your pandavas, all of the pujaris, as well as your guards, should all go and throw yourself at her lotus feet, beg for her shelter and her forgiveness. Go and do this at once. Now, when Jagannath appeared to Mukunda and told him as the king to give a piece of land, he very seriously knew he had to follow this. Imagine the conviction he must have had from an angry Jagannath with no smile coming to him in a dream and telling him he had to free Sachi. So immediately he gathered all the pandits up, he gathered all the priests up, he gathered all the guards with drums and trumpets and a royal procession to the prison. He went in and immediately offered his obeisances, had the priests, pandits, everyone do, and they all placed themselves at Sachi's lotus feet. They begged for her forgiveness. They fell down at her lotus feet, and they all became her followers. She gave them all shelter, gave them all instruction. The king said to her, "The Lord has instructed me that I should take shelter of you, that if I do not take initiation from you, my entire dynasty will be finished. All of my counselors, we all will begin to fast and pray until you give us your shelter." So Gangamata, as she became known now because of this pastime with the Ganga, Sachi Devi became Gangamata. She didn't want any disciples. She had no interest in this. But as this was an instruction coming directly from Lord Jagannath, she accepted them. So understanding all of this, she very joyfully accepted all these different personalities, gave them all initiation. She placed her hand on the king's head, gave him all blessings. Imagine that. I don't think we would see any of the leaders of any of our countries, what to speak of the one we're in now, but any of our countries going before a sadhu and asking for their hand to be placed on their head for blessings. But this is the true mood of a devotee. This was the king's mood. So she initiated the king, all of his followers, and gave them all shelter. Now, what is the duty of a disciple? The duty of a disciple at the time of initiation is to give some guru dakshin. You simply can't take the blessings, simply can't take the initiation. One has to give something in return. It might be according to one's position in life. It might be simple, it might be small, it might be very big, it might be very glorious. So Mukunda Dev is a king. So he decides, yes, I want to give a large amount of land as Guru Dakshin. But Gangamata, she refused. She was not interested. So then the king begged, you must give me some opportunity to give service to you. So she gave this instruction, very, very wonderful. She said, every day you can send 2 containers of Mahaprasadam, one of rice, one of vegetable, a new cloth, and 160 paisa. Now, of course, nowadays 160 paisa is an insult to give to anyone. I don't even think paisa exists anymore. But back then it was some considerable amount. So she said, you give 1 container of maha rice, 1 container of maha vegetables, 1 piece of new cloth, and 160 paisa to all the Vaishnavas daily. So in this way, she gave this instruction that was better than receiving some huge big tract of land and was also service to the Vaishnavas. Here again, detached. He's a king. He could have given her anything. She could have accepted anything. But instead, she sought to do something would be for the service of the Vaishnavas. So as I mentioned, from this day forward, she became known as Gangamata, and the ashram where she stayed at Sarvabhauma's became known as Gangamata Mat. And to this day, if you go there, the midday offering to Jagannath, these 4 things are separated and brought to that temple and placed before the devotees there. So now the king, he made a promise. I will give land for Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's worship, and then I will make a very good temple there. I know that you have come here on the order of your Gurudev, so by fulfilling this for you, it will allow you to fulfill the order of your spiritual master. Remember, Haridas Pandit had instructed her, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's place is run down. When something's run down, the size of it also goes, different people had encroached. So the king gave a particular increase to this area to the size we see now. It's quite a nice piece of property there. You can see the Jagannath temple just from where this house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is. So she established that. She established the worship of his Damodar Shila, and the king gave all of this, and this became his Dakshin. So the temple there of Gangamata Goswamini became very famous, Gangamata Mat, and the worship went on daily everywhere. Now, one day, there was a Smarta Brahmana who came to visit. And he had ancestors that had lived in this area. And he heard the glories of Gangamata Goswamini. So he wanted to have her darshan. So when he came, making an attempt to show, a sincere attempt to show respect, she offered some seat. And she asked him, "You've come, what is the purpose of your coming?" And the Brahmin explained that I have a very righteous reason in coming to you. So seeing his sincerity, Gangamata Goswamini asked him, and he explained he wanted to learn from her the Bhagavatam. So she began to daily instruct him in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This Brahmin, although a very learned man himself, became amazed at her explanations of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he began to dive into the nectar of the Bhagavatam through her direction. And in this way, he also took initiation from her. And then she sent him back out to Bengal to preach the message of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda all throughout. Now, after this took place, she continued with her classes daily at the Gangamata Mat, and all the different residents of Puri, whether they were from high class or from low class or whatever, they would all come to hear from her. And they were all very, very happy. So one day she was sitting in her ashram. She was chanting very nicely. And there was a Brahmana named Chandra Sharma who had come from Jaipur to see her. This is an interesting story. Now, in Jaipur, that Brahmin had been serving a deity, and the deity's name was Roy Krishna. And the deity came to that Brahmin in a dream one day, said, "I want you to take me to Jagannath Puri." This is from Jaipur. "I want you to take me to Jagannath Puri and give me to Gangamata Goswamini. She will serve me. If you do not do this, I will curse you and your family." Now, every day we go to the deities and we pray to them, whether there are deities in our home or deities in the temple, and we pray for some blessings. Never do we want the deity to say, "If you don't do what I told you, I'm going to curse you." No one is looking for that benediction from the deity. So in this way, the deity told him, he said, "You're very sincere, but you're not doing proper service to me. So you take me and you give me to Gangamata Goswamini." So in this way, the Brahmin, he realized that this was his duty. This was the order of his Thakurji. So he took the deity and he went all the way to Jagannath Puri. When he arrived, there was an estimate of time given there, but that's not so important. So when he arrived, he went to her and he explained to her, "This is what has happened. My deity has told me that I must give you to him and you must care for him." And she said, my dear Brahmin, I am doing Manasa Seva in the mood of Rupa Goswami. Even here in my mat, I don't do the worship. I have the Brahmins there taking care. So I cannot personally take care of this Roy Krishna. This is not something I can do. I'm sorry, I can't accept your deity. I have no time to do any external worship. So the Brahmin, he became very worried. Remember, the Brahmin's got an instruction from his own deity that I'm going to curse you and your family if you don't make this arrangement. So the Brahmin thought, what do I do? So now in Gangamata Mat was a very, very nice Tulsi garden. Of course, Tulsi is able to be planted into the ground there because of the weather being much nicer, and very beautiful garden. The Tulsis were all growing nicely. Srila Prabhupada used to say that the nice growing Tulsi is a symptom of devotion. So with the devotion of Gangamata Goswamini, you can only imagine how beautiful her Tulsi garden must have been. So very, very nice Tulsi garden. So when everyone had taken rest that night, the Brahmin snuck into the garden and took the deity and placed in the middle of the Tulsi garden. And then he left. I've done my duty now. Krishna's given me the instruction. I fulfilled it. So the next morning, about 4 in the morning, early in the morning, Roy Krishna, he says to Gangamata, my dear Gangamata, you're neglecting me. I've come for your service. I've come for your love. I've come to accept you, and you're neglecting me. I'm thirsty. I'm so hungry. It's been a very long journey. Please, you must take me and prepare some food and offer it to me. Gangamata understood that the Brahmin has left the deity somewhere. So she went and she looked and she found the deity there in the Tulsi garden. One look at the beautiful form of this deity and her heart was completely enchanted. So she took the deity, brought him inside of the temple and began to do his worship. And to this day, if you go to the home of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, you'll see this deity is still worshipped there. When the king heard this story, he thought to himself, how fortunate I am to be the disciple of such a great devotee as Gangamata. So this is a bit of the story and history of Gangamata, how she came to be such an important personality, the level of devotion that she had. And we can see that everything about her life is in direct line with the teachings we receive from the Goswami, how to live our life, how to focus our life on service to the Lord. Of course, most of us, we're all in the household ashram. We have our duties, our responsibilities, but we can see that the devotion, the determination, the detachment that are present there in the life of Gangamata Goswamini is something we can embrace, maybe not to her level. We may not be ready to just pick up the cloth from the side of the road and wear only that, or to go from neighbor to neighbor. I don't know if I'd want to go from neighbor to neighbor in my neighborhood. I'm not sure what they'd be eating, but at any rate, we have this inspiration that we can follow in her standard of devotion and commitment to the service of the Lord. So these are some of the pastimes of Gangamata Goswamini. I've been asked maybe to finish a little early like this and take any questions. If anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to try and give some answers. Anybody has anything? If not, I can point. Oh, go ahead, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much. A very inspiring story. We never get to hear a lot about acharyas or our disciple succession in this deep. Thank you very much. I have one question.
Please.
Generally, in the tradition in our line ISKCON is to give a name. Generally starts with your first letter. So in this case, Sachi Mata, she was not given a name of like Gangamata. She was given because of the pastime she was able. So could you elaborate why is the tradition started after some time in our lineage, or is it? I just got. If you can clarify, that would be grateful.
Well, I think that we find this was Prabhupada's standard. Many of the personalities we see, Narottam Das Thakur, when he accepted Diksha, his name was not changed. The change of name actually on the three boys, Narottam, Shyamananda, and Srinivas, came from Jiva Goswami when they were given that mission to go and distribute the books. But it was just Narottam Das Thakur Mahasaya, Srinivasa Acharya, Shyamananda Pandit, like that. So their name wasn't really changed in that sense. My understanding would be this is more something that Prabhupada brought to the table for us, because with the exception of persons like yourselves who have wonderful names, I mean, names that most of us here in the West grew up with weren't anything particularly glorious or related to Krishna consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada in this sense began to give us these different names. I've never read in any shastra that it's required to do that. I'm not the most well-versed, so I'm not sure, but it is something that we did see during the earlier times of Mahaprabhu and the Goswamis and all, that this was not always done. You're absolutely right. but it was something that Prabhupada felt the need to do, to give us names that connected us more to Krishna. And as a result, that's what we do with our children. We may indeed give our children a name that will allow them to move through the world with a bit of ease, but we have a Krishna conscious name in there also, you know. So that's about all I could say on that, honestly.
Oh, thank you, Prabhu. Thanks for that.
I had mentioned a little earlier when I was speaking with Shatarupa that, you know, the Chicago area where you all are is very dear to me. I was the head pujari for some time there with Kishore Kishori. And my wife, at the time, not my wife, was the head cook. And we met each other there in Chicago, and that was the beginning. And this is 40 years later. Chicago holds a very dear place to us. Plus, it was the first place that I got to render personal service to Srila Prabhupada. And it's where I received my Upanaya from Srila Prabhupada there too. So
Oh, wow.
Kishore Kishore, you have a special heart, a place in our heart. When I lived in St. Louis, we used to call Kishore Kishore the sweethearts of the Midwest.
We are looking forward to see you in person in Naperville after these crazy times.
Yeah, once all this changes, we can all get back to our travel schedule of going places and gathering and, you know, doing big festivals. For right now, somehow Krishna has some plan. I think it's just to increase all of our taste for each other's association, because more and more we're finding devotees are hankering to get together in groups and festivals and events, and we're not able to. So this is just Krishna's trick to increase our appreciation for each other's association.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's my pleasure to speak with you.
Is anybody else have any questions to Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Anandini Priya. Thank you so
Yes.
much for the wonderful lecture and wonderful story. I have a question. When Gangamata, she was took into the temple of Lord Jagannath by
Yes.
the waves of Gangaji. Then Pujari, they doubted her, but how come King also doubted? Because King knew that she's a great devotee. Lord Jagannath came in his dreams to give her a place to live.
Well, you know, we do find that, how shall I politely say this? Sometimes, even though one may be the pujari in a temple, one may not necessarily have the proper respect for Vaishnavas. We do see that, you know. It mentions that if one does not see that the Vaishnava is equal to Krishna, then his worship to the deity is not accepted by Krishna. This means that one's consciousness may not fully represent the position that they have, you know, and this is due to material desires in the heart. So in this particular thing, we can understand that the pujaris were not the most pure, that they would look at Gangamata Goswamini in that circumstance and assume she must be a thief, means they had some bit of mundane vision. Fortunately, Lord Jagannath was so satisfied by their efforts at serving that he gave them the proper benediction and shelter by making them take shelter of Gangamata Goswamini, and thus she would be able to instruct them how to proceed properly on the path of devotional service.
Okay, thank you so much, Prabhu.
Yes. So shall we finish there, Prabhus?
Let me check on YouTube, Prabhu. Anybody have any questions from YouTube Live?
All right.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dhanavad Pranam Prabhu. I have a question. Why is it we don't know about Gangamata Goswami so much? I mean, I didn't hear so much about her.
Well, my answer to that would be because there's not enough people like me talking about her.
But thank you for sharing, Prabhu.
My particular focus for some 35 years has been the history of our acharyas. So I've made it a point to dive deep into different pastimes that are available to us through, all kinds of literatures that I've read. As I mentioned, the Anubhashya by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati goes into the pastimes of many of the acharyas that we don't normally speak about. So I think it's just due to the fact that we don't have enough exposure to this, Now we've got, 8 or 9 people that have heard about Gangamata Goswamini, and you'll speak about her, and then those people will speak about her, and then in this way it spreads around, Nrsinga Das Brahmachari, Nrsingananda Das Brahmachari. He's one that many people don't read about. He's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. In his mind, he created a path for Lord Chaitanya. So, I think it's just a question that we kind of get stuck on our main acharyas, the 6 Goswamis and our different succession after that, Bhakti Vinod and Gorkashore and Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada, of course. But there are so many acharyas whose lives can be an actual example and whose circumstances can be an instruction to how we can go through our daily life and deal with different difficulties and circumstances. So Gangamata is one such personality, There's a lot of discussion now in different circles about whether women are qualified to be gurus and this and that. I won't go too far down that political road, but all we have to do is look at someone like Gangamata Goswamini and, well, there's an answer. I always say that any difficulty that we have in Krishna consciousness, all we need to do is look at the lives of our acharyas, and the answers are there. There is no circumstance in our ISKCON society that we can't find that hasn't already happened. Personal servants falling down. Look at Lord Chaitanya's personal servant, Krishnadas. People taking funds beyond what their means were. Govardhan and Hiranya, the relatives of Raghunath. All of these different things are there already in the pastimes of Mahaprabhu. We just have to become more versed in these pastimes and understand how to see these and apply them to our own lives.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the answer. And I have one more question. After
Yes.
Gangamata Goswami, are there any other women acharyas in our line? Goswamini.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
After Gangamata Goswamini, are there any other women acharyas in the line?
There are many, many different ladies who are female acharyas in our line. I put together a list when they were doing this research on female Diksha Guru, just a random list from my readings, and there was easily 10, 15 different ladies. Srinivasacharya, for instance, both of his wives and both of his daughters were initiating gurus. Sita Thakurani, the wife of Advaitacharya, she was initiating guru. And the list goes on and on. It's not a new thing that we've just created here in ISKCON. It's been going on for some time.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Yes.
For that.
Prabhu, I have a question in the chat. It is from Ashish Yadav, Prabhu. The question is, Hare Krishna Prabhu, I read somewhere that you have done great work on researching of senior Vaishnava lives. Can you touch upon how you developed that interest?
Well, it's a funny story. When I was a young man, there was a series of books out that were all about the criminal element of Chicago back in the gangster days. Yeah, just you happen to be in Chicago.
Yes.
All the babyface Nelsons and the Legs Diamond and Pretty Boy Floyd, all of these different criminals, and the G-men, as they were called, the federal agents that brought them together. So that was a big interest of mine. And I researched and I knew the history and biographies of all these people. I could tell you where they were born and when they died and what they did. It was just, and then as I got older, that same type of interest got transitioned to the great composers because I got into classical music. So Beethoven and Bach and Paganini and all these different personalities. I can tell you about their lives and why they wrote what they wrote and where they lived and all this stuff. So I've had an interest in this. Finally, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, I came into contact with the biographies of our Vaishnava acharyas. And that was, okay, now I know where I'm supposed to be. So I've spent the last 35 years, researching, and any book I can get my hands on, bona fide books that I can get my hands on that has this information, and, putting together pastimes. And so, this has kind of been something that I was destined to do, I guess you could say.
Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, a follow-up question from my side on that one. Initially, when we started this conversation, you mentioned you compile all these Vaishnava Acharyas stories in one place. Is that your website, Prabhu? Can you please explain so everybody can get that
Sure.
information?
chaturatmadas.com. If you go there, there's links to all of my lectures on the Vaishnava Acharyas and classes that I've given on them. And then you can also find on YouTube, all you got to do is pop in the same information, and there's a number of lectures there. It's, I take great pleasure in it. What can I say?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. All right, I guess I'll let you all go on with the rest of your evening. I've kind of run a little bit over what you said, but I don't mind doing it if you don't mind letting me.
Don't mind, Prabhu. This is really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to sometime in the future, maybe we can gather together again and speak about other Vaishnavas. Tomorrow is also the disappearance day of Baladev Vijayabhushan. I have a video lecture on his life. And then the day after is the wondrous Nirjala Ekadasi that we can all follow.
Tuesday.
All right. Thank you so much.
Prabhu.
All glories to Srila
Hari Hari.
Prabhupada. All glories to the Vaishnavas. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you
Hare-
for being with us and giving your association. Hare Krishna.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Pad ki jai.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.